It normally takes me about 45 minutes to walk the almost 3-mile distance home, but seeing what I had seen and doing what I had just done tends to put a spring in your step. After I was a few hundred meters from the hospital and out onto the main road, everything was so normal, contrasting with the fear I had just seen. People driving on by like the world had not suddenly gone mad. The only odd thing to the rest of the world was the extra emergency vehicles with sirens on speeding to the hospital, but of course no one took any notice of this. It was a hospital after all. I considered going back, trying to figure out what happened. I decided against it and realized what an odd state I must look, standing on the side of the road with a metal mop pole in my hand and a coat which I had just noticed had some dark stains on it. I smelled it. The whiff of rotten meat settled at the back of my throat and I choked. I took my coat off, leaving me with just my purple work t-shirt, very stylish. I walked up the road and smoked a cigarette, turning to the left to the local Tesco's. Everything was in a daze. More normal things were happening around me, people carrying on with their lives. Anger came up inside me. I wanted to shake them, ask them why they didn't care what had just happened to me. Of course they had no way of knowing this, and my reaction was that of all humans who go through stress. Nobody loves, everybody hates me. I walked through the double doors, grabbed a plastic carrier bag and shoved my coat inside it. Why was I here? I should be calling the police, screaming, panicking, anything other than this, but no. I'm here deciding what kind of bread I want and which toilet paper. John does not think feels like sandpaper. For just 5 minutes, I craved normality, peace. I got some crisps and headed to the counter. The girl behind the till asked me, "Sir, are you okay?" God, I remember when people didn't call me that. I'm only 24. For God's sake, I muttered. I was fine, asked for a pack of fags, paid, and wandered back out into the parking area. The entire scene had changed. I looked down the road to the junction that would take you to the hospital. On the junction there were half a dozen police cars stopping traffic in all directions. People climbed out of the cars and angrily started to yell at the dozen or so officers, all of whom were too busy talking on walkies or putting up what looked like crowd control barriers. I walked closer till I was only 20 feet from the barrier and looked down the off-road from the junction. The hospital was just out of view, but I could see an army of police cars outside of it, and was those military trucks. No, that's stupid. Only in the movies does this stuff happen. An officer in his 50s approached me. "Sorry son, road's closed and I need you to take a few steps back. Looks like you have the day off." "Pardon," I replied, surprised that he knew I worked at the hospital. He nodded at my shire, indicating where it said NHS Trust. "Of course, sorry officer, does you know what's going on?" He shook his head and rattled something off about a mild public disturbance. "Nothing to worry about, just a precaution." I apologized again to the officer and walked away, not wishing to draw any more attention to myself. Precautions mild, not if you have seen what I have. I walked for home. After half an hour or so's jog, I turned onto Camden Road that runs through a small town in the southeast. I walked past all the shops starting to wind down from the working day, waved at the guys in the kebab shop where me, John and Tara were regulars. John and Tara short for that. I know, weird name, but I didn't pick the name, were my best mate and brother respectively. John had come to stay with us for a couple of weeks about a year ago. We had been best friends since we had first met 5 years ago. I was slightly older than him. Tara was my younger brother, the youngest of 3 boys. He has lived with me for 2 years since our mother died. The middle child, Toby, yes, I'm well as where all our names begin with T, but I didn't pick them. Lives just round the corner in a 1-bedroom flat with one of my ex-girlfriends. No, they're not sleeping together. Toby has a girlfriend. I hadn't spoken to Toby since before Christmas, but the thought of contacting him was pushed out of my mind with the sudden realization that I was at my front door. I live in a small 2-bedroom, the 2nd of January in terraced house, me and Tara having a bedroom each and John having the front room at his room. The only thing I didn't like about the house was you had to walk through Tara's bedroom to get to the bathroom. I opened the door and stepped in. The bailiffs had been by again while I was out requesting immediate payment, blah blah. I ripped it up and threw it in the bin. John was still in bed asleep, but he didn't have work till 5, so it was fine. But what if there wasn't a 5? I decided not to wake John and headed upstairs and went to the bathroom. Tara had not been to college today, teacher training or something, and was also asleep, probably shattered after staying up till 8 this morning playing video games. So many things raced through my head. I dunked it under the cold tap. That helped a bit. What would a rational person do in this situation? Put on the news. If it's that serious, it will be on there. I walked into my bedroom, dropped onto the bed and flicked on my TV and laptop. That's when I saw it. The hospital was there staring back at me from an aerial view from the circling helicopter. Underneath on the scrolling headline, I could see the small figures wandering round outside the hospital covered in blood, some chasing down the few livings remaining. My eyes rose to the headline, "The Dead Walk,